Have you ever stopped to wonder why, despite sleeping for 8 full hours, you wake up feeling as though you have just dragged your body through a heavy, exhausting swamp? As I sit here in my study in Atlanta, looking out at the soft moonlight filtering through the oak trees, I am reminded of the 30,000 souls who have sat across from me in my examination room over the last 3 decades. I am 50 years old now, a milestone that has shifted my perspective from merely treating symptoms to deeply understanding the fragile architecture of the aging human frame. Through 30,000 stethoscopes pressed against weary chests, I have heard the rhythmic language of the heart, a language that becomes increasingly complex once we cross the threshold of 60. At this age, your body no longer possesses the silent resilience of youth. It loses that forgiving nature that allowed you to bounce back from a night of poor rest in your 20s or 30s. I have watched too many of my patients, good people who have worked hard their entire lives, slowly wither away, not because of a lack of will, but because of a lack of knowledge regarding the physics of their own sleep.
The transition into your 60s is a profound shift where the stakes of comfort transform into the stakes of survival. It is a period where the heart, that tireless engine that has beaten over 2 billion times for you, begins to require a more deliberate kind of care. When I review the clinical data from prestigious institutions like Harvard or the specialized cardiac centers in Japan and South Korea, the evidence is staggering. Nearly 75% of seniors are unknowingly placing their cardiovascular systems under extreme duress every single night. We often mistake the stiff joints, the morning dizziness, and the shortness of breath for the natural progression of aging. But I am here to tell you that it is often a man-made fatigue. Your circulation slows down as the elasticity of your vessels decreases, and the heart must work significantly harder to move blood against the force of gravity. Imagine a seasoned marathon runner being forced to sprint uphill in the dark with a heavy pack on their back. This is exactly what you are asking your heart to do when you lie down in a position that compresses your chest or obstructs your airflow. I recall the countless conversations I have had with patients who felt they were fading, fearing that their best years were behind them simply because they couldn't find the energy to play with their grandchildren or walk through the park. They speak of a hidden tiredness, a weight in their limbs that no amount of coffee or vitamins can lift. It breaks my heart to see that spark of independence dimming in their eyes, especially when the solution is often found not in a pharmacy, but in the orientation of their own pillows. We spend a third of our lives in bed, yet we treat sleep as a passive blackout period rather than the most active phase of biological recovery. After 60, the lungs do not expand as easily as they once did, and the spine loses that supple flexibility that once made any position feel comfortable. If you are positioned incorrectly, you are effectively suffocating your organs, forcing your pulse to race and your blood pressure to spike in a desperate attempt to maintain oxygen levels. In my clinical experience, the difference between a life of vitality and a life of frailty often comes down to these invisible choices made between the hours of 10 at night and 6 in the morning. I have seen the before and after transformations that seem almost miraculous. Patients who walked in hunched and gray, only to return weeks later with a radiance in their skin and a steadiness in their stride. They didn't find a fountain of youth. They simply stopped sabotaging their own hearts while they slept. This journey we are embarking on together is about more than just medical advice. It is a cinematic homecoming to the strength you thought you had lost. It is an invitation to listen to the whispers of your body before they become screams, to understand that your bed should be a sanctuary of restoration, not a site of silent strain. As your physician and your friend, I want you to feel thrashed and understood. But most importantly, I want to give you the keys to reclaim your breath and your life. The world still needs your wisdom, your stories, and your presence. And that begins with the very first breath you take when the sun rises tomorrow. Let us pull back the curtain on these midnight mysteries together for the sake of your heart and the many years of joy that still await you. As I lean back in my leather chair, the dim light of my office casting long shadows over the medical journals piled high on my desk, I find myself thinking about the sheer quiet resilience of the human heart. To most, the heart is a mechanical pump, but to me, after 30 years of clinical observation, it is a faithful companion that never asks for a day off. However, there is a specialized kind of exhaustion that I see in my patients over 60, a weariness that doesn't come from a day of hard labor, but from what I call the marathon in the dark. Every night, while you believe you are drifting into a peaceful slumber, your heart may be forced into a desperate, high-stakes struggle for survival. Clinical research from leading institutions such as the Mayo Clinic and Harvard Medical School indicates that nearly 80% of cardiovascular events in seniors are influenced by the physiological stress of sleep.
When your body enters its most vulnerable state, your heart rate variability should stabilize, and your blood pressure should naturally drop, a process we doctors call dipping. But for so many, this vital recovery process is hijacked by the simple physics of a poorly chosen sleeping position. I have spent thousands of hours analyzing polysomnograms, those complex sleep studies that map out every breath and every heartbeat, and the data is heart-wrenching. I see the lines on the monitor spike and dip like a frantic mountain range. I see oxygen levels plummeting to 85%, a level that would cause alarm in any emergency room. When oxygen saturation drops even by a few percentage points, your brain sends a panicked signal to the adrenal glands, releasing a flood of adrenaline that jolts the heart into high gear. This isn't rest. It is a state of biological siege. Imagine your heart, which has already been beating for 6 decades, suddenly being told it must sprint uphill while you are unconscious. This invisible labor causes the walls of the heart to thicken and the chambers to stretch, leading to a silent progression toward heart failure or chronic hypertension. My patients often come to me complaining of a pounding in their chest at 3 a.m. or a sense of dread upon waking, not realizing that their heart has been fighting a battle for its very life while they were dreaming. In our 60s, the reserve of our cardiovascular system begins to thin. The arteries are no longer as supple as silk ribbons. They are more like weathered garden hoses that require more pressure to move the same amount of fluid. If you are positioned in a way that compresses your major vessels or restricts the movement of your diaphragm, you are effectively placing a kink in that hose. The heart must then generate immense force to overcome that resistance, leading to a state of chronic inflammation that eats away at your vitality. I have looked into the weary eyes of so many men and women who felt their independence slipping away, believing it was just the tax of old age. But in reality, their hearts were simply exhausted from running these nightly marathons without any chance to recover. It is my mission to help you realize that you have the power to stop this internal war. By understanding the mechanical stress of your sleep, you can finally grant your heart the true sanctuary it deserves. We are not just talking about getting a good night's sleep. We are talking about ending the nightly trauma that is slowly aging your heart from the inside out. Through the lens of science and the warmth of human understanding, we can turn the tide on this silent strain and ensure your heart beats with ease for decades to come. I will never forget the morning Robert Bob Miller walked into my clinic, his shoulders hunched as if he were carrying the weight of the entire state of Ohio. Bob was 78 years old, a retired postal worker who had spent 40 years walking the streets with a heavy mailbag, and he possessed a rugged dignity that I deeply admired. But that morning, his skin had a grayish, translucent quality, and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped his cane. "Doc," he whispered, his voice cracking with a fear he tried to hide. "I'm waking up gasping for air, and I'm terrified that one of these nights the air just won't come back. I want to see my grandson walk across that graduation stage in May, but I feel like I'm running out of time." As we sat together, I realized that Bob was being haunted by a ghost in his own bedroom, a ghost created by the way he had slept since his days in the Navy. Bob was a lifelong back sleeper, preferring the supine position because it felt familiar and disciplined, yet it was exactly this habit that was slowly suffocating his heart. When I placed my stethoscope against Bob's chest, I could hear the irregular, galloping rhythm of a heart under siege. I explained to him that when he lay flat on his back, gravity became his silent enemy, pulling the soft tissues of his throat and his tongue backward into his airway. This narrow passage created a turbulence we know as snoring, but more dangerously, it led to obstructive sleep apnea, where his breathing would stop entirely for 10 to 20 seconds at a time. Each time Bob stopped breathing, his oxygen levels would crash and his heart would scream in a silent panic, surging with blood pressure spikes that reached levels as high as 180/100. I showed him the clinical statistics, studies confirming that seniors who sleep in the supine position are 50% more likely to suffer from sudden cardiac arrest or stroke during the early morning hours. "Bob," I said, leaning in close, "your heart isn't failing because it's old. It's failing because it's being strangled every single night." It was like a mini fight or flight episode happening 50 times an hour, leaving his cardiovascular system in a state of permanent tatters. The ghost of the supine position is particularly cruel to the aging body because our tissues lose their tone, making the airway collapse much more easily than it did in our youth. For a man like Bob, who already had mild hypertension, this nightly trauma was the equivalent of a slow-motion car crash. He told me about the vivid nightmares he had, dreams of being trapped underwater, which I knew were actually his brain's way of interpreting the physical lack of oxygen.
The fear in his eyes was a reflection of the thousands of seniors I have treated who suffer in silence, believing that their gasping and their fatigue are just the price of living a long life. But there is no dignity in a struggle that can be prevented with a simple shift in orientation. We discussed how his heart was being forced to enlarge its chambers just to handle the pressure spikes, a condition that would eventually lead to congestive heart failure if left unchecked.
I promised Bob that we would banish this ghost from his room, not with a pill, but by retraining his body to find a safer, more life-giving way to rest. As he left my office that day, there was a glimmer of hope in his expression, a realization that his fate was not yet sealed by the calendar, but could be rewritten by his own choices. To understand why the left side is the promised land for the aging heart, we must look at the body not just as a collection of cells, but as a masterpiece of biological engineering. In my 30 years as a physician, I have often marveled at the specific geometry of our internal organs, particularly the way the heart is cradled within the chest cavity. The heart does not sit perfectly in the center. It tilts slightly to the left, and the great vessel known as the aorta, the massive highway that carries oxygen-rich blood to the rest of your body, curves in a graceful arch toward the left side. When I share this with my patients, I tell them that by sleeping on their left side, they are finally working with the blueprints of their own creation rather than against them. It is a left side revolution, a simple mechanical shift that provides an immediate, measurable reduction in the workload of the heart muscle. Clinical trials conducted at renowned cardiovascular centers have shown that this position can improve cardiac output by as much as 15% in individuals over the age of 60. Imagine for a moment that your heart is a pump at the bottom of a hill. When you sleep on your right side or your back, you are asking that pump to push fluid upward against the resistance of gravity and the weight of other organs. But when you roll onto your left side, gravity becomes a helping hand, allowing the blood to flow more naturally into the aortic arch and out to the extremities. This reduced resistance means the heart can beat more slowly and with less force, lowering your blood pressure while you rest. For my patients who have spent decades struggling with the numbers, this is often the most effective medication they have ever received. Furthermore, the left side position allows the lungs to expand to their full capacity, ensuring that the blood being pumped is saturated with the highest possible levels of oxygen. I have seen the before and after charts of patients whose nocturnal blood pressure settled into a healthy, rhythmic pattern for the first time in years just by making this one change. This isn't just about comfort. It is about providing the heart with the luxury of efficiency. After 60, we can no longer afford to be wasteful with our energy or our oxygen. The left side position also helps to keep the inferior vena cava, the large vein that carries deoxygenated blood back to the heart, open and unobstructed. When we sleep on the right side, the weight of the liver can sometimes press against this vital vein, slightly slowing the return of blood and causing the heart to struggle to fill its chambers. By choosing the left, you are clearing the tracks for the most important train in your life. I often tell my students that if we could package the benefits of left side sleeping into a pill, it would be the most expensive and sought-after drug on the market. But it is free, it is accessible, and it is waiting for you every time you pull back the covers. It is a profound act of engineering that honors the tireless work of your heart, giving it the space and the ease it needs to keep your life's flame burning bright and steady. Dorothy Higgins was a woman who embodied the grace of a retired librarian, soft-spoken, with a mind like a steel trap and a heart as warm as the Savannah sun. But when she sat in my exam room, she looked as though she were nursing a secret wound. "Dr. Gupta," she said, clutching a handkerchief, "every night around 2 in the morning, a fire starts in my chest. It burns so hot I can't catch my breath, and then my heart starts racing like a frightened bird in a cage." Dorothy was 82. And she had been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, but the fire she described was actually a severe form of acid reflux that was acting as a hidden trigger for her heart condition. She was terrified that the burning was a sign of a heart attack and that fear alone was sending her blood pressure into a dangerous spiral. I knew immediately that Dorothy's struggle was a classic example of how the digestive system can hold the heart hostage when we are in the wrong position. I explained to Dorothy that because of the way the stomach is shaped, it sits primarily on the left side of the human abdomen. When she slept on her right side, the opening of the stomach was positioned below the level of the stomach acid, allowing that caustic fluid to spill upward into her esophagus like water over a dam. This fire wasn't just a matter of indigestion. The esophagus sits right next to the heart, and the nerves that control the stomach, the vagus nerves, are the same nerves that regulate the heart's rhythm. When Dorothy's esophagus was inflamed by acid, it irritated those nerves, sending chaotic signals to her heart and triggering her racing episodes. I showed her the clinical data indicating that nearly 60% of seniors with heart palpitations also suffer from undiagnosed gastrointestinal reflux. Dorothy, I said gently, we aren't just going to treat your heart. We are going to put out the fire that is startling it. By shifting her to her left side, we could use gravity to keep the acid in the well of the stomach where it belongs. The transformation was nothing short of cinematic. Within just 4 nights of making the switch to her left side, Dorothy's midnight fire was extinguished. Without the constant irritation of the acid, her vagus nerve calmed down and her heart began to beat in a steady, reliable rhythm for the first time in months. She returned to my office with a glow in her cheeks and a basket of homemade cookies, her eyes sparkling with the independence she thought she had lost. "I can sleep through the night now, Doc," she told me, her voice steady and full of life. "I don't feel like a burden to my children anymore because I'm not gasping for air in the dark." It was a powerful reminder that the body is a symphony, and one out-of-tune instrument can ruin the entire performance. Dorothy didn't need more heart medication. She needed to understand the geography of her own internal organs. Her story is a testament to the fact that when we heal the gut by simply respecting its position, we grant the heart the peace it needs to thrive well into its 80s and 90s. As we journey through our 60s and 70s, we often worry about the fog that seems to settle over our memories and the slow decline in our cognitive sharpness. In my decades of research, I have come to realize that the brain is not just a repository of thoughts, but a highly active metabolic engine that produces a significant amount of waste every single day. Just as your city has a sanitation department to clear the streets, your brain has a specialized system known as the glymphatic system to wash away toxic proteins such as beta amyloid, which are linked to Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. But here's the critical discovery that has changed the way I practice medicine. This nightly detox is not an automatic process. Its efficiency is profoundly influenced by the position of your body while you sleep. Research from prestigious universities like the University of Rochester has demonstrated that the glymphatic system is up to 40% more effective when you sleep on your side rather than on your back or stomach. I often tell my patients that sleep is the time when your brain literally washes itself. When you lie on your left side, the natural drainage pathways of the lymphatic system are aligned in a way that allows for maximum fluid flow. This process is essential for maintaining the health of your neurons and ensuring that you wake up with the clarity and presence you need to engage with the world. I have seen so many seniors accept brain fog as an inevitable part of aging, but I believe much of it is actually a form of metabolic congestion. If you spend the night on your back, you are essentially asking your brain to clean itself while the drains are partially clogged. Over years and decades, this accumulation of cellular trash contributes to inflammation, not just in the brain, but throughout the entire cardiovascular system. The heart and the brain are deeply interconnected. A dirty brain sends stress signals that keep the heart in a state of constant low-level agitation. By choosing the left side, you are facilitating a deep systemic cleansing that supports every organ in your body. It is a form of internal hygiene that is far more powerful than any detox tea or supplement you can buy. I have observed patients who, after switching to side sleeping, reported a significant improvement in their mood, their focus, and their overall sense of well-being. They felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from their cognitive functions. This is the beauty of biological alignment. When you give your body the correct orientation, it knows exactly how to heal itself. We are not just protecting your heart, we are protecting the very essence of who you are, your memories, your personality, and your ability to stay sharp and independent. It is a profound realization that the way you lie down tonight can determine the clarity of your thoughts tomorrow. You have the power to keep your internal streets clean, ensuring that your golden years are lived with a mind that is as vibrant and clear as a mountain spring. I often hear from my patients, "Dr. Gupta, I've been a back sleeper for 60 years. It's too late for an old dog to learn new tricks." I look them in the eye and smile because I know that the human brain is one of the most adaptable structures in the universe, even at 80 or 90. We call this neuroplasticity, the ability of the nervous system to rewire itself in response to new challenges. Changing your sleep position is not an act of willpower. It is an act of environmental engineering. We aren't going to fight your body's old habits. We are going to gently guide it into a new, healthier rhythm using simple, tactile reminders. I tell my patients to think of their bed not just as a place to crash, but but as a recovery suite that needs to be carefully arranged for success. It starts with the right pillow, one that is firm enough to support the gap between your ear and your shoulder, keeping your spine in a straight, neutral line that prevents the neck from collapsing and the airway from narrowing. One of my favorite old school tricks that I've shared with thousands of patients is the tennis ball technique. It sounds almost too simple to be medical, but sewing a tennis ball into the back of a pajama top is a highly effective way to train the subconscious mind. When you attempt to roll onto your back in the middle of the night, the slight discomfort of the ball nudges your brain to return to the side without ever fully waking you up. I also recommend the use of a body pillow, a long supportive cushion that you can hug with your arms and legs. This creates a sense of bilateral symmetry that calms the nervous system and prevents the hips from rotating, which is often why people find side sleeping uncomfortable for their lower backs. We are giving the body a sense of security and groundedness that mimics the feeling of being cradled. Clinical observations show that with these physical cues, most seniors can successfully transition to side sleeping within just 21 to 30 days. It is also vital to create a mental anchor before you even close your eyes. I suggest spending the last 15 minutes of your day lying on your left side while you read, pray, or listen to soft music. This tells your brain, this is our safe place. This is where we heal. If you wake up in the middle of the night, as many of us do, don't be frustrated. Simply acknowledge the moment and gently roll back onto your left side. Each time you do this, you are strengthening the neural pathway for this new habit. I have seen the most stubborn back sleepers become side sleeping enthusiasts once they feel the surge of energy that comes from a night of unobstructed breathing. It is about being patient with yourself, treating your body with the kindness you would show a dear friend. You are not fixing something that is broken. You are upgrading your system for the long haul. This art of the shift is the bridge between the person you were, tired and strained, and the person you are becoming, vibrant, rested, and in total control of your own recovery. Arthur Sterling was a legend in the New Orleans jazz scene, a man whose saxophone had sung in the smoke-filled clubs of Bourbon Street for over 50 years. But when he came to see me at 75, the music had stopped. Arthur looked frail, his once strong hands thin and veined, and he moved with a gingerly stiffness that told of losing muscle mass, a condition we call sarcopenia. "Doc," he told me, his eyes moist with a deep, soulful sorrow, "I don't have the strength to hold the horn anymore, and I get winded just walking to the mailbox. I feel like I'm disappearing." I sat with Arthur and explained a concept that many seniors find shocking. Every night while you sleep, your body enters a catabolic state where it begins to break down its own muscle tissue for fuel. For a younger person, this is easily repaired the next day, but for a man in his 70s, this nightly self-cannibalization is a hidden disaster that weakens the heart and the limbs alike. I told Arthur about a miracle that was sitting right in his kitchen, casein protein. Unlike the whey protein that athletes use for quick recovery, casein is a slow-release protein that takes 6 to 8 hours to digest. I suggested that he have a small bowl of low-fat cottage cheese or a cup of Greek yogurt about 45 minutes before bed. I explained the science, how casein forms a gel in the stomach, releasing a steady stream of amino acids into the bloodstream all through the night. This constant supply of building blocks prevents the body from breaking down muscle and instead provides the heart with the nutrients it needs to repair its own fibers. Studies from the Journal of Nutrition have shown that seniors who consume casein before bed increase their muscle protein synthesis by over 30% compared to those who don't. "Arthur," I said, "we're going to feed your heart while you sleep so you can play that saxophone again." The result was like watching a black and white film turn into vibrant Technicolor. Combined with his new left side sleep position, the casein gave Arthur's body the raw materials it had been starving for. Within 6 weeks, he returned to my office, and the jelly in his legs had been replaced by a firm, steady strength. He wasn't just walking better, he was breathing deeper because his diaphragm, a muscle itself, had been strengthened by the nightly infusion of amino acids. He reached into his bag and pulled out his saxophone, playing a few bars of a slow, beautiful blues melody right there in the exam room. The tears in his eyes weren't from pain anymore. They were from the joy of reclamation. Arthur's story is a powerful reminder that we must proactively nourish our aging bodies, especially during the long hours of the night. You don't need expensive supplements to save your muscles. You just need the right timing and the right kitchen medicine. By feeding your frame while you rest, you ensure that you wake up with the power to sing your own song, whatever it may be. Eleanor Vance was a woman who had spent 40 years teaching children how to read, a retired educator from Portland who possessed a sharp wit but a body that felt like a leaking battery. At 80 years old, she was struggling with fasting blood sugar levels that were stubbornly high and a brain fog so thick she sometimes forgot why she had walked into a room. "I've tried the pills, Dr. Gupta, and I've tried the diets, but I just feel like I'm living in a gray world," she said, her voice heavy with the resignation of someone who had accepted a diminished life. Eleanor's husband had passed away from a stroke 5 years earlier, and her greatest fear was losing her independence and becoming a burden to her family. I realized that Eleanor's metabolism was in a state of nocturnal chaos. Her blood sugar was spiking and crashing throughout the night, causing her heart to race and her brain to suffer from a lack of stable fuel.
I put Eleanor on a dual protocol, the left side sleep position to optimize her circulation and a nightly ritual of 30 grams of casein protein to stabilize her blood sugar. I explained to her that by providing a slow, steady drip of nutrients, we could prevent the dawn phenomenon, that spike in blood sugar that happens when the liver overproduces glucose in response to the body's nighttime stress. When you combine this metabolic stability with the improved oxygen flow of side sleeping, you create a healing storm that revitalizes every cell. Eleanor was skeptical, but she was also desperate, so she promised to try it for 1 month. "Just 30 days, Eleanor," I told her. "Let's see if we can't find that battery leak and plug it." We weren't just looking for better numbers on a glucose monitor. We were looking for the return of the woman who loved to garden and tell stories.
The transformation was one of the most profound I have witnessed in my career. 2 weeks into the protocol, Eleanor called my office, her voice sounding light and resonant. "Doctor, the fog is gone," she exclaimed. "I woke up this morning and I felt sharp. I went out and weeded the entire rose garden before breakfast. When she came in for her follow-up, her fasting blood sugar had dropped by 20 points and her blood pressure was the most stable it had been in a decade. Her heart was no longer being whipped by blood sugar spikes. It was resting in a state of metabolic peace. Eleanor's awakening was a testament to the fact that aging does not have to be a slow decline into the shadows. When we provide the aging heart and brain with a stable environment and the right nutrients at the right time, the body's innate wisdom takes over. Eleanor wasn't cured by a miracle. She was restored by the simple scientific application of physics and nutrition. She is back to teaching her grandchildren to read, living her life with a power and a presence that serves as an inspiration to everyone who knows her. As I sit here reflecting on the stories of Bob, Dorothy, Arthur, and Eleanor, I am struck by a single powerful truth. You are not a victim of the calendar. After 30 years of practicing medicine and witnessing the struggles and triumphs of 30,000 patients, I have learned that the way we age is often a reflection of the small, invisible choices we make every single night. We have spent this time together unmasking the silent killers, the supine position that strangles the heart, the midnight fire of reflux, and the nightly fast that strips away our muscle and our strength. But we have also discovered the cure, the left side revolution, and the kitchen miracle of casein. This is not just a medical plan. It is a blueprint for your new identity. You are no longer someone who is simply surviving the night. You are someone who is proactively investing in a future of independence, clarity, and heart-centered strength.
I want to leave you with a clear, simple summary of the path forward. First, claim the left side. Use Goyom body pillows, tennis balls, or whatever tools you need to ensure your heart is in the position of least resistance. Second, nourish the fast. A small serving of casein protein, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, or a slow-release shake 30 to 60 minutes before bed will protect your muscles and stabilize your heart's environment. Third, be patient but persistent. It takes about 3 weeks for the brain to accept a new sleep position, but the rewards will last you for the next 30 years. These are not suggestions. They are clinical imperatives for anyone over 60 who wants to keep their heart beating strong and their mind razor sharp. I have seen the statistics and I have seen the faces. The difference in quality of life between those who adopt these habits and those who don't is like the difference between a guttering candle and a radiant sun.
My dear friend, I am calling you to action right now. Don't wait until Monday, and don't wait until you feel like it. Tonight, when you walk into your bedroom, I want you to see it as your personal sanctuary of recovery. Arrange your pillows, prepare your small protein snack, and lie down on your left side with the intention of healing. You owe it to yourself, to your children, and to your grandchildren to stay as strong and as vibrant as possible for as long as possible. The world still needs your light, your experience, and your love. If you found hope in these stories and value in this science, I invite you to join our community. Please subscribe to this channel and share this message with someone you love who is over 60. Together, we can change the way the world ages, not with fear and frailty, but with power, presence, and a heart that beats with the rhythm of a life well lived. I'll be here to guide you every step of the way. Sleep well, live strong, and I will see you in the next chapter of our journey toward healing.